Babs? Babs?
All right, can you hear me now?
Maybe.
All right, so
God forbid you put a comb through your goddamn hair for this podcast. Gee, come on.
all right, so I sent it out in the group. We're gonna give it about 5 minutes. Worst comes to worst, it'll end up being you and me, but we can still do it with two people. We'll see what happens if people start getting on.
Okay.
Hey, I did my best. We tried to accommodate everybody, but we did a couple pushbacks, so we knew this was going to be expected. What
Yes,
happened?
sir.
What happened on Wednesday?
I was stuck at work. Big project we had to get out. We got it out, so we're good.
That's good to know.
What is that? Where's that shirt from? Where's Cobblestones?
I don't know. That's a good question.
How you gonna wear a shirt that you don't know
I
where?
got it when I was at Goodwill.
All right, I'm gonna look this up right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cobblestones Pub. There's one in Dublin, and then there's one in Forest Hills. Must be the Forest Hills one, right?
Yeah, because somebody donated it. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. You got to get me one of those polo shirts.
There's nothing at Goodwill.
I don't work there anymore.
Yeah, but you can still go. You can still shop there, Babs.
Yeah, true. It's just we don't. The ones for they don't. The store down the street's no longer open. It closed down.
Ah.
It turned into a gift store now, which just sells literally wares.
Sells what?
Wares. It's a gift shop now.
What the hell was that glove, Babs?
I don't know. I found it somewhere. I found it on the trade.
Babs, throw it away. You found it on the train. Throw it away. It was just sitting on the floor of the train.
Nah, see.
Throw that thing away.
I'm a weird guy.
All
right, so we'll get 5 more minutes or so. All right, so with Saratoga, how are we getting me up there? One of you guys is, and when's that weekend again?
July 7, 8, 9. Yeah, we'll figure that out, Babs.
Do I need to get the 7th off, which is probably a Friday, or are we leaving in the evening?
It's a good question. Is it a pain in the ass for you to put in to take off?
Not necessarily. I would just have to put in for it next week.
So just put in just in case. If you put in for it and you don't have to take that day off, is it a pain in the ass to work, or is it?
No, because either way I'm going to be paid.
All right, so put in for it then, just in case.
All right. Yeah, because then I'm going to have to, after the wedding, I'm going to have to save up my PTO again for a little while, just till the end of the year, like around Thanksgiving time, because I think me and my mom are going to plan to go away.
My mom and I. You're going to be a podcaster. You have to work on this.
Yeah, fair enough. All right.
At least you shaved, though.
Yeah, it was getting kind of hairy. No pun intended.
Come on.
And then one other question: wedding weekend. Do I need to get that Friday off also?
Yeah, I would take that Friday off.
Okay. So what are those?
I sent you all those times. You still have those?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know what the hell I did with them.
It's fine. Since I don't text you all that much, I text you at certain times, but not all the time. I can find certain things easier.
See if you can find that. Make sure you can find that.
All right. This will just take another few minutes. I don't know what's going on with the other guys. What project did you get stuck at?
A project in Greenberg,
What are they building?
single family homes,
Which?
single family homes.
Where in Elmsford?
The former Elmwood Country Club.
I could would a single family, which is probably a one floor, be an eventual consideration for me in your book, or not necessarily?
Sure, why not? Once this podcast blows up, abs.
Oh, with the other two formats especially. Oh wait, that's Justin.
What was the last podcast you did?
I'll look at the title in a moment. Hold on, let me just find the wedding stuff. When did you send that?
That was, I feel like it was a while ago, Babs.
June 7th, Wednesday, bachelor party.
I think I just sent you a picture.
Didn't show up yet. I'll look for it later. And remind me, before we get started, when is our next get together?
Yeah, we got to figure that out. I mean, it was supposed to be tonight, but I'm still at work.
Do you want to do next week or the week after?
Let's do. Let's say. Let's do the week after.
So the middle of the month?
I want to say Thursday, June 22nd.
Okay. What day is that? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday?
Thursday.
Okay. All right, perfect. All right, so let's get started.
All right. Not give me time to stretch or anything like that?
Yeah, go ahead and stretch.
And you didn't even send me over a format like you did last time.
I had to write it this time.
Okay.
Let's just say I've been a little busy. All right, guys, welcome back to Sports Talk. It looks like it's only going to be two people today. So I hope everybody's been doing well.
But the two most important people, Abs.
The two most important people are going to be on today. And today's Sports Talk theme, we're going to discuss college sports and high school sports. We're going to discuss a little bit about our memories, and then, kind of what it takes to get into coaching. We're going to touch probably a little on education, the educational aspect for athletes as well. Then we're going to discuss the college game, which is a beast itself. So as long as everybody is good, let's get into this. All
good,
right.
Babs.
Since it's you and I, and we both we both were involved in sports together. Well, obviously it was high school. When you played football, what were the top sports you played as a kid?
What do you mean top sports? You think what I was best at or what I enjoyed the most?
What did you enjoy the most, and then what did you end up which sport were you best at?
Well, early on, I would say that I enjoyed basketball the most, but that probably turned to football. I was probably best at baseball.
But yet you ended up playing football for a year or two in college.
Yes.
Now, interestingly enough, even though you loved the other two more and you were a more talented baseball player, what ended up attracting you to wanting to play college football?
Well, I think it was the experience that we had my senior year of football. It was such a great experience, so much fun. I think that carried over, and it was, a bit of a rude awakening going to college and finding out, small fish in a big pond, big fish in a small pond, I should say. Where there's a lot of good football players out there. And, I think my favorite part of football was, you're playing with your friends and you go to college and Friends aren't
Now you're
around, so that kind of
actually
takes.
now you're actually competing with people.
That's
That's
it. Yeah.
and you were probably you had to compete with a running back room, if I'm correct, of probably at least 5 guys, and you probably had to train a lot. I'm sure summer camp hadn't been that easy.
Well, believe it or not, summer camp was easier at the college level. That's when they started instituting all the rules. No 2 days, 2 days in a row, and whatnot. So high school was a lot more demanding in that sense, but obviously skill wise and size wise, college was a lot more demanding.
So here's a good one for you, because I was, especially when they recruit a high school running back, what did they look for that would carry over to college, with the understanding that in college you were coming out of a wing T offense?
Well, I wasn't recruited so much as a running back, as much as a wide receiver and a safety / cornerback.
But you were a running back in high school.
Yeah, just
How did they end up deciding to try you at the other two?
because I wasn't the biggest of guys, and I wasn't. I'll admit it. I wasn't a very good running back. I just, by lack of anybody better, really, I just, I kind of fit in that position. I was much more of a wide receiver kind of player, but just, just fit in when you go to a smaller high school and you only have, what do we have, 20 or something so kids on the team.
We were a double, if I remember correctly, even though I was involved in a different aspect and didn't directly play, we were a Division I AA school in high school.
But the smallest one, because we combined with North Salem.
Well, yeah, because originally, all right, before we became a AA school, do you remember how they decided
something came down in front of your camera? There we go.
Do you remember what the criteria was in the high school leagues to be considered? I believe it's DC, BA, and AA.
I mean, it's changed up a whole bunch since then. But it was obviously enrollment. And I think, I could be off by a little bit, but I think the enrollment threshold that we moved up at was 1,000. And we were only at that because of the enrollment in North Salem.
And we had made some great friends who still stayed with us at this point in life just due to that enrollment size. And
2 of them should be on this call right now, but I don't know what happened.
I'm
not gonna name names, Abs.
I'm not gonna name names either, but one of them was like, I have a birthday party I have to go to.
Well, that was his nephew, so that's legit.
That's legit.
And Coach B might be doing OTAs right now. So that might be legit too.
Yeah, but even still, it's missing, a lot goes into putting especially on my end, goes into putting these shows together, so that in this case, I'm gonna do a separate little.
Yeah, so save a lot of this content, Babs, and once we get everybody. But this will be a good intro to this.
Yeah, we'll definitely do a part 2 with some of this, with a bigger group, but we can always do a part 1. I'm going to save this and we're going to try this again.
And what you should do is you should start including Ryder in this too.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to. We'll discuss that at the bachelor party.
Okay. All right. And you could ask anybody else at the bachelor party too.
Oh yeah, no, I'm going to start doing that. So basically, when I run this as a business, what goes into not just this, but the other formats, is the product ultimately is going to be the content and the guests. If the guests can't show, we can still wing it with 2 to 3 to 4 people, as I've done successfully before, or you water the format down to like an interview style. So, the content is the content. It's never going to go anywhere.
Of course. Yep.
And that's the beauty of running something like this. Yeah, I'm not making money on this, right now.
Not yet, Babs. And I'm not trying to tell you how to do your job. Let's get that. I'm not trying to tell you
exactly.
Your job. You're the host. You're no.
Yeah, I'm basically ringleader, project manager.
Yes.
Project manager.
Captain.
Captain, my
quarterback.
captain. You've come into my realm, which is the internet.
Yes, sir.
Just like the way, think about it. Look at Pat McAfee, of all people.
Of all,
The
how did I
punter.
know? How did I know you were going to bring up?
I had to
McAfee?
look at how big it. Look, doing something like this, no one knew the punter had a personality. Now look at him.
Why
He's
do you
Richard.
assume? Why do you assume punters don't have a personality?
Well, because
Babs,
of
you
Phil
stop doing that
McAfee.
on camera.
Yeah, sorry about that. That'll have to get edited out. Because
You can't be doing that
I
on camera.
think kicker and punter were like those skill positions that were seen and not heard.
Sure, doesn't mean they don't have a
So,
personality though.
No, they had a personality, but it was always overshadowed by a quarterback.
Yep.
Okay. From a young age, what was the first sport that you would say you got involved in?
I think my parents said soccer. I think soccer was the first sport, and I lasted a year playing soccer in kindergarten, and that was it.
What did you learn in soccer?
I couldn't tell you. I was too young. I learned that I didn't like it, and that was I played 1 year of soccer, and then t-ball and that started up, which I loved. I love baseball and all that.
So lessons from a young age that you learned in baseball.
Oh man. Well, because it's your first introduction to, the whole team aspect. What have you done with your peers up until that point? You barely at that age. I think soccer started in kindergarten. So I had just started school. I just started, meeting these kids that I would be eventually playing with, and you learn how to, which I'll admit I'm still learning to this day in some aspects, how to deal with people and deal with different personalities and try and work together with people to make things happen, to win and whatnot. It's not easy.
Even though I didn't end up being able to really play much sports, at high school because of other reasons. I like you started probably with t-ball and then wanted to do, like Little League baseball from a young age. And those didn't end up working out, but that's what always kept my passion, and interest in sports as somebody on the autistic spectrum. It was an outlet at a young age. I feel like sports becomes more of a social outlet when you're a kid to start meeting people. You start understanding teamwork from my belief, probably once you get to middle school, because you've known the people for a little while.
And at that age, you're learning how to deal with people and hang out with people outside of the whole school scenario.
Well,
because that's
outside of the school situation for sure.
Yes.
Because unfortunately, yeah, you do have to learn how to deal with people at a young age. I mean, maybe I didn't think about it as much back then as I would now, but I could say for sure, especially now being in a very difficult industry, that a lot of those early lessons from sports and even, being involved with football in high school, baseball, lacrosse, and then doing free intern work along the way in college, it taught me a lot on how to deal with difficult people that I had to carry over into a retail environment, and then even carry over into what I'm doing now, which is, when you're in healthcare, I think you just touched on a great point. Healthcare is depending on the medical group, can be a very women-dominated industry, and you do have to learn to work with even the opposite sex, as I have in some way, and try to find, a mutual understanding, especially with different age groups.
Absolutely. I mean, and the field I'm in, engineering, is a very male-dominated field. So, that was, I guess, an easy adjustment. But, we work hard and to diversify the field because it is very male dominated, and we're at a time where we need engineers right now, where the numbers are way down.
Well, if you look at the trends, more people really right now who could become civil engineers, they want to go into the tech sector. I mean,
sure, that's the hot thing right now.
What, besides it being the hot thing, honestly, they do, unfortunately, if you want to be a software engineer, they're making pretty reasonably good salaries. But the one thing I would say that's positive for the industry that you're in is, oddly enough, your industry provides at least, more long-term opportunities, whereas tech right now, the only opportunities really getting are contracts.
Sure.
I mean, the guy, my guy over here, Justin, already knows this for sure. If you want to be a web developer, no matter what level you are, you're on basically a short-term or long-term contract if you can't get in with a major tech company.
Well, how much has web development changed in, say, the last 5 years as it did the first 15 years it was around?
It's gotten a lot more. It's definitely gotten to the point where you need to know more scripting languages.
Sure.
From what Justin's told me, it's more than HTML and CSS. Some developers code in Ruby on Rails, Ruby by itself. Then there's Python. Then there's a data analyst will use SQL. Believe me, now with artificial intelligence and machine learning, it's literally gotten, to the point where you need to constantly skill.
Sure. And I'm not telling you how to do your job, Basil. I think we're getting off topic, right? Or no?
No.
This is your podcast. I'm not telling you.
We are okay. Slightly off topic, but it's okay because it was an interlude. So
if you want to go back to lessons learned in sports, I mean, one of the biggest
we'll do that.
Okay.
What lesson did you learn that carried over to the working world?
Well, the biggest thing is you learn how to fail. You don't win every time you play. And baseball, you're an all-star if you succeed 3 out of 10 times. So you learn how to fail. You're going to fail throughout your entire life, and you got to, the difference in people is how they deal with it.
I can tell you right here, those early lessons, even being manager, it didn't prep me for the failure that I've endured, which was a lot. It was not being able to get the best stable job, having to constantly, start from scratch.
So you're talking about, but the failures we're talking about are completely different. The failures that you've experienced is the failures in our systems, not in your ability or your work ethic.
I was able to, but the work ethic started in sports, and the failures, learning from that age about what's the best way to put this? Learning from the point in high school where we were around failure in sports at least helped me sort of cope a little bit different for life. What I learned through sports is that I'm going to have to work on teams with people. I'm going to have to be adaptable with people, just like, if you run a bad series, you try another series.
That's it.
In football, if you have a bad inning in baseball, you have to try to not suck it up, but you have to try to have short-term memory and forget it and try again.
That's it. Short-term memory. Next play. Just like, when I went to try to learn dancing, even, which is athletic itself, it's you have a bad dance, you try again. Same thing. How good of a dancer are you right now?
Right now, long out of practice, that's for sure.
That's all right. It's like riding a bike, Vaps.
Yeah, you don't forget, that's for sure. Same with riding a bike. Okay, so here's the next topic. School. Okay, from what you've seen, even though we wanted 2 particular people here about coaching, what, from your knowledge, what is the process of becoming a teacher and a coach, and what do you believe coaches can be influential on with their players and kids from a young age that set them up for later in life?
Well, obviously I haven't coached that much. But it's not to say that I haven't learned a ton from my coaches. I mean, I think I don't know if I'm in the majority, the minority. I guess the minority, because most people didn't play sports in high school, but the people that I listened to more so than teachers were my coaches, because I could relate to them more. So, obviously, and they've been through it. So there's plenty of lessons to be learned.
I think a
Um,
coach is a different type of a teacher.
it's a teacher just the same. Yeah.
I see coaches as more. I see sports coaches as life teachers. Just
Sure. And it's,
they.
and it differs at every level. Um, you know, Obviously my high school football coach, it was completely different than my college football coach because, well, I guess this is a good comparison because I only had both of them for 1 year. Coach Clark, my senior year, was only there for 1 year. And then Coach Phelps up at St. Lawrence was only 1 year. But, it's a lot more personal in high school. It's not as competitive. It's, college coaches are coaching for their livelihood, for their job. So it's not, they can't really afford themselves the patience that a high school coach could. And maybe it's changed a little bit these days where these coaches, even high school coaches, are under so much pressure. They back in the day, they you weren't hearing about high school coaches getting fired unless they did something stupid. If they won, who
Well,
cares? It's just
we're dealing with different coaching generations. I feel like what we grew up with and what kids grow up with today has become more common, at least at the college level especially. You don't see a coach maybe last for more than 1 or 2 years in college now, you know with the older generation,
unless they're exceptional.
unless they're exceptional. Let's take a great example of a coach who just literally, you saw him for like a year or two, Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino was a good example of a coach who literally just carried his resume in his back pocket. He would stay at a job for 1 or 2 years, make a ton of bank, then move on to the next job.
Well, you saw it with, they're always looking for the next thing. They're never really set, unless you're Nick Saban at
But
Alabama. Like
I was a
look at
you
Chip Kelly.
you took the words right out of my mouth. I was about to go and quote Nick Saban. Nick Saban, I will say this from the point of somebody I have the utmost respect for in his profession. He jumped around a little too much in the beginning, and then after he got fired in the NFL, it was nice to he went to an effective football factory. You go to Alabama and win 1 or 2 years, go to a national championship, you're
Well,
a
he
guy.
turned it back into that. Yeah, it was there when it was like that when it was Bear Bryant. But I'm not 100% sure, but I don't think Alabama was nearly what it is now. When Saban took over.
No, because Saban probably took from his failure lessons in the NFL and then finally built a solid program and pipeline.
Yeah, and he used that failure as motivation and said, "All right, I failed in the NFL. I tried it. Let me get back to college, and I'll be the best college football coach of all time."
Well, he's a god now in Alabama, and all he needed
Yes,
to
he
do
is.
was consistently for a whole decade be going to the BCS.
Yeah. Well, he's a god in all of college football
Oh
and
yeah,
Alabama. Yes.
but then you look at Coach Prime, Coach Prime
He's
time.
doing some good things.
Oh, he is because
Whether you agree or like the way he does it, he's doing some good things.
because he was a popular media figure first. He was
And
a
he's
great he was a Hall of
great
Fame
personality.
football
He's got that.
player.
Yeah.
He was made to go to college. It's funny though that he controversially decided to tell an HBCU, I don't want, I'm going there. And he turned them
He's
into a
doing it his
winner
way.
over 2 years.
He's doing it his way.
Although running off the past college coaches players probably isn't the best idea.
Hey, if that was part of his plan, he's got to stick to it. And that's what he set down and said, okay, this is how we're going to do it. This is the only way, not the only way, but yeah, this might be the only way we get there. We're going to have to do this, this, and this. And that was part of it. And if it works out, he's a genius. If it doesn't, then, he's just another guy.
I can find examples of college coaches who, unlike Saban, also they were winners, but they were not good personalities. Urban Meyer.
Yeah, I mean, really nothing. Those interviews where you're not getting much out of it.
Urban Meyer.
He kind of fell off the face
ran
of the earth too.
Well, and he also ran some crooked programs.
I mean, sure, he was the one who got caught, but I'm sure they're all doing it.
Oh yeah, no, they're all definitely doing it on some level. And actually,
He
here's
just
a
got caught.
great here's a great question, because when the three of us were growing up, you didn't hear that much about what they considered under the table deals with how the NCAA makes laws. And actually, topic that I think deserves a little discussion today from the college ranks. How did you And this came up to when Northwestern players wanted to finally unionize in the middle of last decade, was should you be paying a college player, or should the college institute that they play for be offering them things like paying for a full ride scholarship is enough, or should you really be paying a player that was multi-talented?
No, they should 100% be getting paid. And who's to say what's enough? With the money that these kids are bringing into the schools and generating for the schools and for the NCAA, why shouldn't they be getting paid? They should 100% be getting paid. But it is scary though, given an 18 or 19-year-old kid millions of dollars. I don't know how to
But
do it. It's above my pay grade, but they
if
should
that
100% be
kid
getting
is
paid.
if that kid was a 4-year starter in a high school and earned the full ride scholarship, there was enough knowledge of this with situations even in the 2010s that McAfee and AJ Hawk discussed. It wasn't enough to live on. Kids had to go to their parents, because the NCAA, all these institutions like Florida State especially, they were taking money away from the kids.
100%, and that's going to the pockets of
old men,
the fat cats. Exactly.
Old men.
No, that money that these kids are generating for the school should go into their pocket. But obviously, like I said, it's scary though, giving an 18 or 19-year-old kid millions of dollars.
Well, because
I would say most of the time, they might not do the right thing with it, but some of them, I don't know, who's to say, but
they're kids at the end of the day. And
yes,
no matter what you do, you give a 22-year-old kid 150, you give a 22-year-old kid who wants to work at, for example, Google as a software developer, a $150K salary. He's going to be just as irresponsible as the college kid, with or without an understanding of personal finance.
That's a good point, Babs.
I'm going to one lesson that I feel could have been covered in sports, but was more of a lesson that parents cover at home. They complain that millennials needed personal finance. Millennials needed to understand, you and me especially, no matter what age you are, you're not going to be responsible with money when you're a young person coming out of college. You learn over time, but parents were demanding that kids be taught personal finance.
We should have been taught that class. I know we had economics in high school, but it wasn't geared towards, we didn't, yeah. And then that should be a mandatory class in college too for these athletes.
I don't think it should be taught to kids in middle school. I think
maybe that's a little young.
4 years in high school, because finance is unfortunately a very complex topic.
Well, in high school, a lot of the kids, that's when they're getting their first jobs, whether it's a summer job or whatnot, and
that's where it makes sense.
Yes, middle school is a little young.
Middle school is too young. It shouldn't be taught to a middle school kid, because a middle school kid's not going to literally can't get working papers just yet.
No.
But this is where all the parents think it's the best to teach them, and it's really not. I will tell you this from my life experiences. Learning personal finance in my 30s finally made more sense than in my 20s, because over time, the sports failures, the life failures finally taught me how to finally grasp things.
Mm-hmm. As long as you're using those experiences to grow and to learn, then doesn't matter whether you win or lose, as long as you're getting better, Babs.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, now we're going to focus a little bit on college. Okay. What conference in college football did you follow the most in the 1990s? Or did you like watching their games?
I wouldn't say a specific conference. The 90s, I mean, the first few college football games I remember, that's when Nebraska was awesome, and then and Miami was awesome. I remember watching the Orange Bowl down at my grandparents'. We used to go down to Florida over Christmas break. And I remember, my father let me stay up and watching Tommy Frazier on Nebraska. And then I got in trouble the next day in school for, we had to do a drawing. So I did a drawing of the Orange Bowl logo, and the big orange was smoking a cigar, and I got in trouble for that in school.
Oh boy, I could see why that became a problem. Just
that
because
wasn't good. Yeah.
Yeah, you drew the cigar part. If you stuck to the oranges, it wouldn't have been a
It
problem.
would have been okay, but that wasn't the logo of Abs. I didn't know.
But we were also disciplined, not just because of sports, but, we were all disciplined a lot differently, versus today's kids.
Yes.
I would say today's kids lack one huge thing, and that's discipline.
So that's on the parents then.
Well, and it's also a parent's responsibility to also, on some level, help educate your kids with finance,
absolutely.
for their life.
Yep.
The teachers until high school shouldn't have to be involved in teaching kids that. But that's a whole societal debate we could do for another podcast. All right. So let's see. In terms of how the sections were structured, and then I'm going to change the topic. All right, section 1AA. What schools did you enjoy playing?
Well, it was all new to us. We hadn't played those teams. The only team that we had played the year before, our junior year, before we moved up, when we were in single A, was Fox Lane. That was always the biggest game, just because, they're a few miles away, and that was our biggest rival. But we kind of developed early in the year, at camps, we kind of developed that little bit of rivalry with Carmel. So yeah, Carmel was definitely a big one. Mahopac, I don't know why we dislike Mahopac, but we did dislike Mahopac. So that was obviously a big game. And then, a lot of the other teams weren't as strong then. Then we got into the playoffs. We started playing Mount Vernon and New Rochelle. Mount Vernon, I was very psyched for, because that's where my grandfather played. Now, what are you doing over
there? Nothing.
That's where my grandfather played. He played for Mount Vernon, and he was great. So that was exciting, getting to play them. And that was really the first game Ryder, my little brother, got to play full time. So that's really when I got to play with him.
We can brag about this. We got to see Ray Rice before he went to the NFL. That's something we're going to remember the rest of our lives.
Absolutely.
You played against him. I witnessed him in high school. Then he went on to college and then got drafted. So it was great to see, someone like that come out of Section 1AA.
For sure.
You got 1 year with Clark. I got 2 years with Clark. The second year with Clark, I will say my best memory of him was the patience that, he gave me, just in which I found sort of duplicates of it over my work career, but it's not always been easy. And Clark was a super patient person because, he was also a gym teacher.
He was that kind of person too. And listen, he yelled at you when you needed to be yelled at. He made you run at camp when you showed up late for practice, but he treated you just like the players, and that's the way it should have been.
And
I hope you were able to recognize that.
I did, because
he held you at the same high standard he held all his players.
And that's
because you were just as big a part of the team as the players were.
I've only had 3 managers over my 20 years of working that were like that. And actually, it's funny. Our manager for the orthopodiatry PMR department is actually leaving at the end of the month. And a lot of us were, because she has to take care of her mother and she's taking an overnight job. A lot of us are sad, especially me as well, because she held me to the standard that she would hold the clinical staff and everybody else. When there were mistakes that happened, she was patient with me. She pointed them out and, took time to understand.
Sure. Which is not easy. And that's why people don't do it, because it takes that much effort, and people think they don't have the time for it, but they really do. And it's only going to save them time in the long run too. That's what they need to understand.
Well,
those little lessons that
Yeah, the one thing I was going to say, and I apologize for interrupting,
No, it's
and
okay,
then
Babs. It's your
and then
show. You interrupt
yeah,
me as much as you want.
if companies hired managers that had the patience, you would have less turnover in organizations. You would have more retention.
It's a very good point. There, I see
There's
that
no
at my
patience
company,
anymore these days. What, John Meyer, which is why people stuck around, or not
or
as
some
much
people
patience?
left because there wasn't the patience afforded them. Um, but that's a very good point about people not sticking around.
I
And
think
like I said, people they act like they don't have the time these days, but everyone's got the time. And like if take the 5 minutes to teach them a lesson. Don't be disrespectful. Respect them. Kind of, as mad or frustrated as you are, you got to quell that and you know squash that. Take the 5 minutes, teach them a lesson, because that hopefully would be the last time you have to teach them that. You don't have to worry about that again. So that'll save you time in the long run. It's an investment. Invest the 5-10 minutes to teach them that lesson then, and you'll never have to worry about it again.
And that's what coaches understand. And that's why I feel sports coaches really end up becoming good life coaches later on when they whether they leave the coaching profession, whether they retire from the coaching profession and then try something else, or become motivational speakers.
They essentially, yeah, I would consider my coaches in high school more guidance counselors than my guidance counselors were. Guidance counselors were, they did nothing for me in high school. It was really just, kind of organization. They didn't even help me with college really. It was kind of just organizing college. And I remember having a meeting with my guidance counselor in high school and, talking about the schools that were recruiting me for football, and her, saying, you're not going to get into these schools. Why even look at these schools? And I did end up getting into those schools because of sports, and she really didn't get that. So it was really just an entire waste of time.
Here's a great sports question. What schools before SUNY Cortland actually recruited you?
Seriously recruited me. It was really down to 3 schools. It was St. Lawrence, Siena, and Rochester.
So they were all the 3 schools.
Yeah,
No
I
D1.
wasn't. I mean,
You
Albany.
got the lit.
The Albany coach reached out to me, and I did a visit up at Albany. But that would have been tough, though. That's 1AA football. That's really good football. I played maybe if I worked my ass off, but that would have been a tall task.
All right, and let's see. Before I jump back to focus a little more on college and some of what we watched over the years, here's, I think, a good topic that you touched on, because there's something that I
touch on it all, Vance.
Yeah, there's something that I realized in a statement that you just made. Because in my working career, all the lessons from sports carried over, but one thing I look back sometimes and wonder, should I have chosen a different path?
Everybody's going to think that. Everybody, and the most successful people, I guarantee if you ask Elon Musk, I'm sure he'll say, there might have been other paths he could have taken, or Mark Cuban, or whoever. That's normal, Fabs.
I don't like that I was in customer service and retail for, a large chunk of almost my 20s, and then up until 34 when I finally got hired to a different industry. The lessons from customer service and sports definitely all carried over to what I'm doing now. But sometimes now when I'm building a business, I feel the best type of people you need a good coach, or a coach that can also mentor, or people that can mentor you along the way.
Do you feel like you have that right now?
I'm finding that through different avenues. I mean, you're coming on here and doing this with me says a lot about you and where you are in this life. So you would be in the mentor category, even though we're best friends.
Absolutely,
Justin
but
over
all
here
friends, yeah.
Justin over here definitely is that. Elizabeth and Aaron are definitely that. The people that I'm meeting through doing this are really adding to, what I'm finally being able to do. And when we talk about going from high school to college, sometimes I feel I should have done this in my 20s, but I lacked the focus. Like you with sports, if you had gone to Division I AA, or if I had played a sport, would it have done something more for me in terms of college? Well,
Yeah, and that's a
my
natural
GPA
thing, man.
states
Yeah.
otherwise. My GPAs over the years stated otherwise. And unfortunately, I finished college with a 2.06 overall. It was, look,
Which is
college is college.
which is good, Vabs. Like, don't
College is college. What I realized that college really helped me out with was finally start to structure eventually what I wanted to do for a business. Especially when I went back to college in my 30s, it finally confirmed when I looked at the state of education, what can I learn from while I'm here, while I'm at my job? What can I do, with it, and how can I build my own path in life, with the lessons that I've learned in college in my 30s.
Well,
From
that's the
looking at
thing. Yeah,
college as a
going to
business.
college when you're in your 30s. I mean, that's the big difference. You get to college when you're 18, 19 years old. You want to party. You want,
Play
you
sports.
love the ladies. You play sports and all that. But college is what you make of it. You could coast through and get your little piece of paper at the end, and you don't learn anything. You don't figure out what you want to do, and you kind of float around aimlessly for a little bit. I knew I wanted to do engineering. I did engineering, got that degree, and
I wish I had been stronger in STEM, but unfortunately, that wasn't something that was strong in my family.
mhm,
I come from a family of creative people, hence, look what I'm doing.
yes.
Ultimately, it's using the creativity. So I would love to have been better with math or science, but let's be honest. I can learn coding. I can learn data analytics, at least the basics of it. But, because I don't have the strong STEM background like you did, ultimately STEM might not be the best fit for me.
No, and this seems to be your fit, Vabs, because I could tell you're very organized and very well spoken, and obviously you seem to love doing this, and it's great to see. It's exciting because I think you could do very well with this.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting that I found it now at this point in my life when and look what it took. It took COVID-19 to finally realize I need
Yeah.
to do something for myself.
No, I think there was a
Well,
lot. Yeah, I think a lot of people realize that. You know, people got to take a little break from the normal routine and get back to focusing on themselves and maybe discover new things about themselves and discover new hobbies, discover themselves.
so my favorite teams when I was growing up were definitely Notre Dame and the University of Miami for football.
Okay.
College basketball, I got more interested in during the 4 years of high school, you know, and your last few years of high school. That's where I became passionate about college basketball and the NCAA tournament. College,
North Carolina was always my team in
we
college
both
basketball.
got to at least, see Ryder, your brother, go to Division I sports. So at least somebody, since I'm sort of like the unofficial fourth member of your family, I'm the unofficial fourth member of your family.
Well, don't forget about my older brother. Mike played at Pace and then ended up getting
And then
drafted and
he
played for
got
the White
drafted.
Sox.
Yeah. So, maybe you were the washout athlete of the family, and
I was the
Ryder didn't get
personality.
to
I was
go.
the face, Babs. I was the face.
Yeah. I mean, Mike got to play professional baseball and then ended up
Yep.
doing something else. Ryder got to play Division I lacrosse, even though it wasn't his passion. He at least got to go to a really top university, that's for sure,
And
get
then
a top
got into
quality
coaching right after
education.
that. And then now he's, out of the coaching field in the medical sales. But I'm sure he's using everything he learned in coaching, in playing, and kind of carrying that over to the field he's in now, and I'm sure his bosses appreciate it. I'm sure the bosses love getting athletes like that who can be taught and will listen, and I think
Of course.
athletes have that advantage getting out into the real world, into the working sector, because they can be taught and they'll listen and they're disciplined more so than someone who hasn't. Not to say that you wouldn't learn that stuff by, you don't have to play sports to learn that stuff, but.
So in my case, would you say that the foundation of sports really made an impact in my life, even though maybe I didn't get all the things that I wanted?
Of course. And look at the people that you're still in touch with, that you're still friends with from those times when you were involved in sports. Most of your friends from high school are people you played sports with, correct?
A large chunk. I mean, I don't talk to Johnny, I talk to Johnny here and there. We were definitely involved in sports. I know he's gotten really busy, but yes, that's probably the truest statement. It was the people who I played sports with, because honestly, Matt and Mike Bocklet, for example. Hey, look, Matt was a prick in high school, but I will say one thing: seeing him almost 20 years later, he's a changed person. Mike
sure,
was,
yeah. I was a pain in the ass in high school too.
You had your redeeming qualities that
a few of them, but I was a pain in the ass.
Stand out. You weren't that much of a pain in the ass toward me, maybe toward other people. I mean,
yeah.
Mike was a prick. Matt Dratch was a prick. We ultimately, unfortunately, know someone who still is a prick, who hasn't gotten out of that phase of his life.
I can't even imagine who you're talking about, Maps.
He who shall remain nameless.
Okay.
Let's just refer him to Voldemort.
Voldemort.
Let's codename him
Voldemort. Have you invited him to be on a podcast?
I've thought about it.
Maybe you try it out. It could be dynamite.
I'll think about it, maybe for a sports episode. I'll consider it. But the issue that I had with that person is, depending on the episode, he would really have to, he would be around far superior, more intelligent people. And I'm not talking you and me on one of the other two formats. And with him, unfortunately, he has a habit of acting a certain way. It would be spotted. If we did it on this format, then possibly he might be a little more tamed.
You're talking about Voldemort, right?
Yes. Maybe in this format, it would make sense for him. But on my other two formats, I don't think he has the maturity for it. All right. So let's discuss the BCS. What did you think of the BCS format in the early 2000s and how the conferences in college aligned then?
I mean, it's all we knew back then. So at the time, it was fine to me. There were some instances where it didn't seem fair, but looking back on it now, it was archaic. Yeah, now that you see what the system we have now, but no matter how many teams you let into the playoffs, someone's going to get screwed. Someone's going to be complaining. Someone's going to be bitching about it. But I'd rather, with the format now, I'd rather the 5th best team, or when they expand to 8, the 9th best team get screwed than the 3rd best team when they were doing it, where it was just they would pick the top 2 teams. You know what I mean?
The year in 2007 when Oklahoma and LSU were in the national title game and the undefeated team had been USC, that was an example where you could have had a playoff system.
Of course, it would have been fantastic.
Leinart,
the NCAA moves a little slow. And think about the money that they're making off this. They claimed they were going to lose money because of the sponsors and the bowl games. They held those bowl games so sacred, but you just call the semifinal games, call them the Orange Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, whatever. And that's it. Problem solved. And everyone loves the system now. It's been great.
Well, now the system actually is a lot better because it's more of a playoff atmosphere. And it's funny. I think a lot of the changes that they wanted to avoid were more generational suited.
No, 100%. Yeah. No, it's
They didn't
crazy
want to
to
do.
think back at
They
what it
didn't want to
was.
do much. They didn't want to do much for the older millennials, and whatever was left of Gen X. They didn't want to change the system then, but they conveniently started changing it for, Aaron Donald and the younger millennials going into Gen Z.
Yeah, change, it scares people, Vabs. It's tough for people to grasp. They don't want change.
Well, unfortunately, though, if you don't start changing things and you try to stick to what worked, you have businesses today, running off an old school of thought. Like, I'm sure the reason a lot of you have people leaving your firm right now is likely due to leadership not being fully able to listen and understand. And when you make comments like, oh, the younger generation doesn't want to work today, I think it's not that we don't. Even myself at 37, I want to work, but I want to work in a supportive environment.
Sure, and that's understandable. But when the people, that are leading those companies, the bosses, it's tough for them too, because that's not what they were raised on. That's not what they came up with, that kind of system. So you got to
understand
both
that
sides need to understand each other.
So I'm going to make a point, and I'm going to use a political point.
Of course, you're going politics. Of course.
No, but there's a reason for this.
I'm kidding, guys.
It's about older people being able to listen.
Uh-huh.
If you want, for example, to keep people like Chuck Schumer in office who are about 70 years old, people like this at that age need to start crafting policies that make sense for people under the age of 50. So you're looking at the next two generations of parents and younger people who have certain ideal policy preferences that they would like, just like in a firm like John Meyer Consulting, where, at a certain point, as your dad and this generation get ready to retire, who's going to take over when they retire from engineering?
Especially a guy like Chuck Schumer, you say, making all the decisions, but he's been so far removed from reality for so long.
But that can be the same with, the partners at an engineering firm who are probably late 60s to early 70s, can't retire just yet, would also have to start taking an understanding that when you're having younger people now, starting to come into firms like this or government like this, you also have to start thinking about, what do your children and grandchildren now want if you want to still be working?
Absolutely. No, agreed. And that's tough for a lot of places.
That's what a lot of people misunderstand with Gen Z today. In fact, before this, I just brought on somebody to the podcast who's like a project manager too, who's going to be our project manager too, in collaboration for, virtually, for what I eventually want to do, which is build this into a digital media agency, with no actual space, other than basically being an online company. Basically, what she and I both agreed on, which is the middle part of millennials are far removed from what everybody else wants. And, let's look at somebody like me, whether I do sports theme podcast or, social theme podcast. The biggest thing with me is I've been around working for a long time, that I have a really large understanding of things the way you do. So You and I are the leaders of the future, but we're not getting these chances just yet.
Well, I guess I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, everyone's got the chance to start your own business.
And that's exactly how I'm leading.
Everyone has that chance. It's a great thing about America. You don't like the way things are going at your business, start one.
Well, there are some people out there that would argue that the government could be doing more for them.
Oh, come on.
I'm not talking about programs. I'm talking about some people have more complex needs. Like, I would like a better job. Can the government provide that?
Well, you in particular, you're in that tough spot. You're kind of in between, because you work too much. Like when we talked about, possibly getting a place at the A-home, that Mr. Grinelli runs, you're way over, you work too much. You're way overqualified for it, which is
And that
unfortunate because you need the assistance, but you just you work too much, which is crazy to think about. That it's unfortunate. It sucks.
but what was I supposed to do in this
No,
situation?
100%. I agree. No, you should be working as
The
much as you are.
A-home would have been wonderful, but the problem is then I have to think about working less to qualify for these things.
Which is terrible. That's a terrible incentive, you know? You should be working 40, 50 hours a week.
But at the same time, should I also not be able to, should that money be able to help me purchase a home versus, or rent something better than where I'm living right now? That's the part of this that gets very difficult.
No, and that's completely understandable.
That's part of it that
But
we're all
remember what I
having
said.
trouble.
Don't ultimately set your goals on a house. Start with an apartment, start with a co-op.
So why don't I also mention this to you when we're
Because
discussing that
because what's
house?
the point of having
I'm looking at that type of money as also being able to have more options. I'm looking at where you are and where Voldemort is, and I'm looking at not just where I could live, but I'm also looking at the luxury of having more options in this world versus what I have right now.
And it's all going to start opening up, Vabs, because how long have you been with Optum? How long have you been making that salary that you're making right now? It hasn't been that long, right? It's going to keep adding up and adding up and adding up as long as you're smart with your money. Don't do anything stupid with your money.
No, I know this. It's not like I'm too much investing. So the last thing from sports that I think I'm going to touch on for today, due to time, since we discussed the BCS, was there anything else? All right. What do you think of the conference alignment?
Yeah.
The new conferences, like trying to go to a power conference model.
From the business aspect, it's great because, these super conferences are just going to be printing money now. Every game is going to be must see. I'm not too big of a fan of it. I like I'll use, because I'm most familiar with it, Big East basketball. Growing up with Georgetown and Syracuse and Providence and UConn, St. John's, that was tremendous. That was a blast watching those games and going to the Garden and watching the Big East tournament. But money always gets in the way, and money kind of broke up those old school conferences.
And money also wrecked the original Big East from when we were growing up in football. When you had Boston College, when you had Miami, when you had Rutgers all in the Big East.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, watching the 2000 Miami Hurricanes when they were a Big East school with Ken Dorsey as their quarterback.
And Jeremy Shockey at tight end.
Jeremy Shockey at tight end. I mean, and then looking what happened when money completely wrecked the conference and everyone wanted to go to the ACC.
Sure.
It wasn't the same. Miami couldn't duplicate the success leaving the Big East and going to the ACC where they started picking up 2 to 3 losses.
And then, Clemson kind of took over the ACC, much later than 2000.
Well, as they started
Miami had a pretty
younger.
good run in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and Miami's never been the same. Just, even Colorado hasn't been good since the 90s when they had a lot of good teams.
Well,
So
they got in a little bit of trouble there.
Oh yeah, a lot. Not a little trouble, a lot of trouble.
Yes.
I mean, that's unfortunately what happens when you hire certain types of coaches who legitimately run crooked programs.
Well, like I said, I'm sure a lot more people are doing it than we know about. It's just
of course, the people who get caught that are, Pete Carroll got caught.
And he got out just in time.
Yeah, and then look at what happened to USC for almost a whole decade.
Mm-hmm.
USC honestly had potential. Now they might start getting a little better with Lincoln Riley, but now they're taking off for the Big 12.
Is that where they're going?
Yeah, it was announced this past spring that after next year they're going to be a Big 12 school. They're leaving the
Okay.
Pac-12.
Okay.
Just like Texas and Oklahoma wanted to go to the SEC.
Hook 'em horns.
I have this to say about the SEC. I think the conference is great, but at the same time, I think the conference gets way too much hype and attention.
I thought you were talking about the Stock and Equity Commission, not the.
But anyway, I'm glad you came out today, and we definitely, for two people, carried the talk today. So
You did very good, Vabs, and you always run a good podcast. Always very well organized. Good job.
Thanks, buddy. So we're going to see you guys again very soon, and we're going to reschedule with this content with the other guys. Thanks for coming out. I hope everyone has a good night, and
go Giants.
Go Giants. All right, buddy.
Later, Vabs. Love you.
All right, love you too.